Hi everyone, in this video I'll be talking about how can you build a stronger relationship with your clients. This video is taken from the takeaway of the book The Trusted Advisor that was written purely for the benefit of consultants, negotiators, and advisors. The premise of the book is to say that it's not just about what technical skills you have, but how you use them that makes clients think your service is valuable. Now, this is so important is so that they will renew your contracts, they will agree to your engagement fee increase, they would see you as a valuable long-term partner that they really need to have, and they won't be so keen on sometimes, feeling the need to change to another vendor that's probably cheaper and personally for me, I've been in the client servicing industry as by working as a digital marketer for an agency, and also I worked with some other industries as an in-house marketer. And as an in-house marketer, I've also had the opportunity to work with different agencies and to notice what were the plus points and not and slight minus points of working with different agencies. What were their best practices when it comes to understanding and retaining their client and making their clients see the value of the services? And I realized that one of the key points was actually reliability. Reliability meaning that the client could trust the advisor to constantly deliver on their promises and commitments. Meaning to say the base level of service should be ability to deliver on your promise for the work done, or the KPI in that case. And by doing so, whenever you're consistently able to deliver on your promise and commitments, that builds confidence in your clients. Now, I think the challenge always is that when dealing with clients, sometimes, or at least in my case, it's not just one stakeholder they have, but the stakeholder they are working with sometimes has other stakeholders, have bosses, have different stakeholders that rely on the information that you provide. So being able to consistently deliver on your tasks and within the timeline itself makes that person you're working with feel confident that they can rely on you and the things that you provide to them are valuable that can be taken to your stakeholders for business discussions. And another way of how you can build reliability with your clients is actually to involve them in the process. Sometimes the plus point of that reliability is that they want you to solve their problems, then you propose certain solutions based on your framework, and then you guide the client to, based on your thinking framework, how they can potentially pick a solution that's good for them. And I think the reason why you want to do that is that when you get into the exercise of not telling the client what to do, but just coaching them to different ways of thinking, that's when you give a perspective for your client to think that, oh, my vendor doesn't tell me what to do. They actually teach me how to get better my decision making, how to get better my thinking framework. And this is some added value service I can't get elsewhere. Another thing that you can do perhaps to increase reliability is to always keep the client informed on what's going to happen when and why. This can be done via simple status updates. Have a regular cadence of when they expect updates from you. I think the most challenging thing about working with many stakeholders or even client vendor is that when both parties don't tell each other what's going on and someone finds a surprise somewhere, and when it involves timelines and it's very tight, that's when stresses flare up, and this feeling of like, why isn't the agency or the vendor actually telling me what's going on? Why is it I always find out in a surprise? Another thing that's quite important, I think, from a client's perspective is a sense of progress. Sense of progress meaning they're seeing tangible evidence of movement towards their desired outcome. And that also means that giving regular updates or showing them that you have hit your milestones or your KPI is actually quite important. So, from a perspective of, from experience of, say, running a digital marketing campaign, so what I came across last time with my previous boss was he would say that maintain Excel spreadsheet, document the date when you made the changes to the campaign, improvements, major improvements, document the date, campaign, objective, task, and your status. The reason why you do that is because you want to tell your client, these are the things I'm helping you get towards closer to your goal. And if your client is not able to see all those improvements that you made, technically in your mind, it's almost like you did nothing. But in actual fact, you might have done actual work. And it's so important to have visibility on the work that's being done. And that's why you want to maintain an Excel spreadsheet where you document all these improvements, and then your client can use it to justify in their mind that yes, either we hit or didn't hit our goal, but our vendor or agency is working very hard to make sure we get there. And in their mind, whenever they have this like niggling feeling of like thinking, oh, could I get better results with another agency? Could I, get better, like lower like rates, engagement rates with another agency? When they refer to the piece of document, then they realize that, the agency I have right now is doing great, whether we hit or don't hit our target sometimes, I know for the fact that they're working hard and they are providing some sort of evidence for me to justify the management when it comes to say wanting to renew a contract or even consider working with them for the next engagement cycle, for example. Another action point I think is quite valuable is that to build the sense of progress, you can always use weekly check-in meetings or depending however whatever meeting cycle you have with your clients, make it more valuable by showing them the progress that's been done since the last meeting by recapping very quickly, or even sometimes sending information and reports in advance. So what you're doing is that you're using the meeting time to make decisions. Meeting time is actually based for discussion and not presentation. So that whenever you're running the meeting, you have the opportunity to drive the agenda of the meeting to establish what next steps needs to be done. You're giving the sense that we are moving towards the goal, and this meeting is also critical for us moving towards the goal. So I think, in a sense, that you are getting your client to feel like meetings with you is important, so that they are more likely to see the value in every interaction with you. Another important thing that I think advisors can cultivate better with their clients is to help to understand that clients have a need for a sense of control. And what it means is that clients need to feel they're empowered and involved in the process, and not they're not just a passive recipient. So what is this means is that there is clear communication and shared decision making. So I think the challenge sometimes when working with clients and advisor is that advisor tends to tell the client, they tell the client what to do, but then maybe the client also starts to feel like, hey, maybe this is a very passive, being a very passive recipient. That means they only take advice or take action steps, but they don't understand what can be done better. And I think, to me personally, as I progress further in my career, I realized that getting your client to be involved in the process also means that, in a way, you're training them to do more different things that can help in the engagement. Particularly, for example, helping the client to use what we, the advisors, deliver by coaching the client dealing with others in the client organization. And that could mean that you are helping your client whenever your client faces a problem. I realize that it's probably from a request coming internally in the organization. That's why they have questions they need to answer to. And whenever you're able to get them to provide them a different way of thinking by providing some sort of thinking framework or reasoning steps to justify certain decisions in the engagement, you're able to frame the solution to the client in a way that they have never heard before. So, for example, let's say the client wants to know, like, can we justify the things that we are doing for this campaign? What's the rationale of it? When you develop a guideline or a framework in, let's say, a Word document or Excel document that they can take and show internally to their stakeholders, that's helping the client already meet any objections or questions from anyone in the organization. So I think that clients then are more likely to think of you as a huge asset, because you're not just fulfilling the work in the engagement per the contract, but you are able to somehow understand, like, how they can better meet their stakeholders' questions based on your work, and also sometimes giving them a different point of view that they otherwise wouldn't have come across. I think the value add is by the advisor telling the client, hey, if if you're sharing this deck with, like, inside the organization, maybe you want to omit certain data, maybe it may to be too overwhelming. So I think doing that step is about showing the added value of you as an advisor, where you're able to think a few steps ahead and realize that the work that you're doing is not just for your client, but sometimes is for a greater stakeholder that's viewing the work that you're doing. So I think it's about getting your client to think continuously that whenever you work with many clients itself, what you have bring to the table is a lot of experience of helping clients navigate presentations, help navigate clients dealing with people in the organization, to understand your work better. Another important point how advisors can help their clients is getting their clients to feel like they are being understood. And what that means is that clients, when they feel they're being understood, they feel like the advisor truly grasps their situation, their needs, and perspectives. It's not just about hearing what the client says, but also demonstrating comprehension. So I think basically it's about whenever your client faces a problem, I think it's about sometimes it's about realizing whether the agent put themselves in the client's shoes. So I tend to think that this is a challenge sometimes I think that happens with agencies per se or vendors is that they think of things from a task perspective. Uh, this is something I myself also had to experience when I realized that when I made the transition to in-house marketing, I realized that all this while in agency, perhaps I may have been a bit more robotic my thinking, thinking that as long as I hit your KPIs, as long as I get things done a certain way, then things are fine. But for your client to feel like you understand them, also it might mean that you have to understand what are the things that they truly want from this engagement, not just hitting your KPIs, but how do they want to feel supported. And for some clients, it might mean that you are recommending new things for them to try. And whether or not they try or do not try those things, the fact that you recommended new things for them that they can, just add that to their discussion with their bosses or even other stakeholders means that, they always can rely on you to think of new ways of how you can improve things. Another part of it is that clients, whenever they have this need for reporting, they want you to be able to make reports and presentations more useful, things that they can easily copy paste, things that they can easily forward, and things ways that you can do it is perhaps by providing a summary so that the client can use your monthly reporting without any modification on their end. So it also means that whenever you are thinking one steps ahead for the client's needs, that also does translate in the way that you present your data or present your work to the client and help them to convince other people to see the value in your work as well. And one of the ways you can do it is having your reports read by a non-project person. Actually read the report and see that do they understand what you're saying and can they comprehend what you're saying before you send this report to your client. The reason why you do that sometimes is that depending on your industry again, sometimes the client may have a little bit of technical knowledge or sometimes they may have not a lot of technical knowledge, but they need to understand the overview of what you're trying to say to them. And I think it's so important when every piece of work that you have with a client is that if they don't understand what you're trying to say in that written report and they have to depend on you to verbally share that the report to them and explain it through, that could be challenging because I think that would mean that I think the challenge is that when they feel like your report doesn't give them context or doesn't address the deeper question, that's when again the frustration eats at the client. Whether they feel like, oh, is this vendor or agency or advisor actually understanding me? How come I don't understand what's being presented to me? And I think my thoughts here is that whenever you meet your reports and presentations more useful and easier to understand, where the client can repurpose it and reuse it, that's when the client feels like, oh, having this advisor makes my life better. I cut down on time spent on my own internal reporting, and I can perhaps use that time to further um, optimize certain things or maybe make certain suggestions to the agency. So that frees up my time. So my time is not spent on just preparing reports and presentations, but rather I can harness the advisor to actually get their help to do so. At the end of this video, I believe that client perception of value is actually heavily influenced by relationship and experience provided, and not solely by the technical skills employed. So, by building trust and fostering a better client advisor relationship, this is what actually drives perceived value. And my take on this is sometimes the person you're working with may see your value and may really recommend you to internally, but sometimes it becomes a very challenging case to re-emphasize your value if there's many multiple stakeholders that is making the decision whether to engage you as an advisor or not. So I think sometimes having said that, I fully think that it's not easy for advisors as well to navigate managing client relationship. Again, it's partly because of the sometimes the logistics of the engagement fee will also mean how much of time can you devote to a client. Sometimes you could also mean that are you able to understand the different types of clients and what are their needs, and also being able to spot them very quickly and address them very quickly. I think that also takes time and over experience as well. Sometimes it's like the challenging part, I think, about navigating the client advisor relationship sometimes is about getting the client to see you, that no matter how long you guys have worked together, that you always have your perceived values increasing in their eyes. And it's also challenging sometimes, but I think that retaining a client might be better than actually finding a new client and then going through the steps of trying to build a relationship, trying to, to secure the client, a new client to work for you long term. If you have any other tips that you have in terms of getting to build better client advisor relationship, please share in the comments below.